theoretical. I believe that it's a unique kind of spirituality that infuses and transforms creation into a sacramental reality. In this spirituality, creation is experienced and reverenced as a text inscribed all over with the actions of God who triumphs over death to save both humankind and the cosmos. Worship, praise, and celebration in some parts of the continent that I'm familiar with are suffused with rites and rituals that draw upon nature as a source and an inspiration of liturgical action. I believe that something in this spirituality of creation speaks to global Christianity. It offers us as believers yet another tool to restate and reinforce the virtues of stewardship, simple living, and reverence of the earth that could become powerful antidote to an exploitative way of being and doing that prioritizes having over being. More than a challenge, I see a resource here from the upside-down church for the benefit of humanity and the global church and in the world. The Greek philosophers used to say, primo vivere deinde philosophari. I would roughly translate it as meaning life is more important than philosophizing. I don't know if there are any philosophers in the audience, but I used to think that philosophy was a discipline of the comforted. And I know that's a prejudice, it's a bias. Philosophy deals with concrete realities and conditions of being and existence. That is very true. But all that is besides the point. The point I want to make in this section is that the new centers of Christianity tend to be more preoccupied with life and death issues rather than with abstract and doctrinal matters. The survey of Islam and Christianity in 19 sub-Saharan countries by the Pew Forum on Religion and Public Life reveals that the #1 concern of Muslims and Christians in Africa, the #1 concern is unemployment. Unemployment. Doctrinal and dogmatic concerns seem to matter very little. I often wonder, and I hate to drag her into this debate, I often wonder what my 70-year-old mother and many good and faithful Christians like her think of, say, papal infallibility, or shall we say, the primacy of the Pope, or whether or not the Pope is a direct successor of Peter. I often wonder. But I suspect that she may not be alone in her blissful ignorance of and indifference to things dogmatic, speculative, and abstract. The challenge from Christianity's new centers of gravity is that a world church cannot be immune to the challenges and trials and tribulations of the world. Again, to quote Gustavo Gutierrez, if the church is really present in the world, it cannot but reflect in its own life the events disturbing the world. If the Pew Forum study on Islam and Christianity is to be believed, most Africans south of the Sahara who take religion seriously would rate unemployment, poverty, crime, and corruption as the pressing issues in society and in church, or rather for religion. So how does global Christianity or the world church respond to these matters? In my first presentation, I spoke about the challenge of moving from a purely humanitarian mode of response to what I call a structural mode. If the world church, however we understand it, does not offer concrete solutions to concrete problems, or at least facilitate the search for concrete solutions to concrete problems, Christians of the two-thirds church would seek solutions elsewhere. And to mention one example, many Christians in sub-Saharan Africa have fallen prey to the so-called gospel of prosperity promoted by Pentecostal churches. These are churches who preach that material prosperity is a reward for faith. The more faith the adherent manifests, the more abundant the prosperity. It is a simple calculation that appeals to many Africans, many Christians in sub-Saharan Africa. Very simple, very appealing. All other social ills or misfortunes, such as unemployment, poverty, sickness, are reduced either to insufficient faith or the action of an evil spirit. And in the latter case, the solution lies in the deliverance of the Christian from the shackles of the evil one. In the final analysis, I would argue that if we don't challenge this approach, religion will do more harm than good in the context of socioeconomic and political crisis. But the question remains, what alternative solutions does the world church have to rival the allure of other approaches such as prosperity gospel? At the Second African Synod, Pope Benedict made the insightful remark that Africa is the spiritual lung for humanity, although it is subject to the toxic spiritual waste being deposited from the continent from other parts of the world. I want to believe that the Pope's statement is an invitation to consider how Africa and the community of Christians in Africa can put their spiritual treasures at the service of the world church, whose demographic center of gravity has shifted and continues to shift towards the south. I believe that if the issues that we have considered in this presentation and talked about during this series are assessed constructively, the two-thirds churches stand a better chance of fulfilling their role as a community that indeed supplies the universal church with life-giving breath of freshness, renewal, and creativity. How faith is understood and practiced on the continent of Africa may well be one aspect of the theological regeneration of the universal church and global Christianity. As one of the new centers of contemporary Christianity, I strongly believe that the African church can make and does make specific contributions to the function, meaning, and mission of the world church